73, Town of Collingwood, County of Simcoe, and part of Lot 12 and part of Lot 13, east side of Maple Street, Plan 73, Town of Collingwood, County of Simcoe, is not being lost within a registered plan of subdivision. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Hull, Councillor Hanlon, questions, comments? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have two questions, and I expect we'll direct them through you to Director Farr. The first is, I note that there are a number of trees on this property, and I'm wondering what will be the disposition of those trees. Will they be removed? Will they be retained?
Okay. Second question.
And the second question is, given that this area is a combination of residential and commercial, and given that it's very close to the Heritage District, I'm wondering if there will be any direction relative to the design of the parking area to be sensitive to the rest of the neighborhood and the district.
Okay. Director Farr?
Through Madam Chair, I see the proponents in the audience here tonight, and those questions may be more appropriately addressed to. Those questions may be more appropriately addressed to the proponent.
Good evening.
How are you?
Christine Oft. I'm actually the proponent in this case, and so acting on behalf of myself. In terms of the question of the trees, we are trying to save them, but there is one tree for sure that has to come down for parking, and one that we're trying to work with Tatham's on coming up with a parking plan that would save it, and the rest of them at the back will all remain. So we are trying to save as many as we can. And your second question was just design?
Yeah, just the design of the parking lot, or the parking area, and the result on the streetscape, etc.
Right. So it is fairly narrow lot, so cars have to come in a laneway and then park adjacent to the commercial building on the corner. There are 6 parking spaces required, so we are providing that, and we're trying to keep them more to the front lot line to avoid cutting trees. So it's an either or. We either push them back and lose trees, or keep them sort of adjacent to the house, what's a house today, and keep the trees. So we've decided our plan right now in terms of a drainage plan is to keep parking between the front lot line and sort of the rear of the house. Will fit 6 parking spaces, and in that case losing for sure 1 tree and possibly 2. And there will be landscaping along the front, and we haven't quite got there yet. But
So you do intend to put some landscaping on the front of it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hanlon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'm just wondering if the construction plan will be subject to site plan control.
Director Farr.
At this stage, we through the chair, we haven't assessed this application in terms of the application of site plan control. At this time, it's strictly the deeming bylaw, so I'll be speaking with the planner in terms of the appropriateness of the bylaw application in this case.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 6.3 is PW 2019-20, installation of a new sidewalk on the east side of Ontario Street between Lockhart Road and Gulfview Drive, and I believe that Manager Velick is going to be delegated by Director McDonald to do this report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. So the sidewalk we're proposing is on the east side of Ontario from Lockhart up to Tracy Lane. This project's been identified in our DC study for a number of years, and we receive several requests a year for the sidewalk to be installed, and we think once Eden Oak is fully built out, we'll just be getting more requests. Ontario is an arterial road. As per engineering standards, we should have sidewalks on both sides. There is currently one on the west side. previous slide. So the images below, the images show the two potential locations for the sidewalk. We recommend putting it 2.5 meters from the back of curb, really for two reasons. One is safety. We don't want people walking right next to a busy road like here in Ontario. They also get covered in road spray if it's wet. And also for snow storage, if we put the sidewalk right next to the road, the plow pushes the snow onto the sidewalk, and then the sidewalk plow comes and pushes some of that back on the road, and then just back and forth. It's just a maintenance headache. The unfortunate situation here is that there are 59 trees right where we need to put the sidewalk. 59, most of them are Scots pines. We looked, we spoke to an arborist, we spoke to a landscape architect about how we could save these trees. If you put the sidewalk right next to, like in the left photo, in the offset photo, the trees definitely won't survive. If you put the sidewalk next to the curb, you're still infringing on the roots, and you would see some sickness in the trees over the years. And with the predominant wind direction, we don't want to see any of those trees falling on the properties next door. So we're proposing to put the sidewalk 2.5 meters off of the sidewalk, of the curb. We would compensate with 25 new trees at 10 to 15 meter spacing. We also need to investigate the bell infrastructure in this area. There's very significant bell duct banks running through here, so we need to investigate that and see really where we can put the trees exactly. And if we can't put them there, we would look at putting them elsewhere in the municipality. Next slide, please. This is looking north on here, Ontario, at Gulfview Drive. As you can see, we'll need to move some of our Welcome to Collingwood signs, or our wayfinding signs, and some tourist signs. There's about 4 of them in some of the gardens. Next slide, please. This is just looking south along here, Ontario. This section's a bit simpler, and really that's it. Answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. All right, so before we go to council, is there anyone in the gallery who wishes to ask any questions or make comment on this file? Okay, seeing none. Then our motion for council that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. The staff report PW 2019-20 be received, and council approve the design of a sidewalk and associated tree removal along the east side of here Ontario Street between Lockhart Road and Tracy Lane for the purpose of providing pedestrian access. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Hall, Councillor Hanlon. Questions, comments to Manager Bellick? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, through you to Manager Bellick. What accommodation is planned for cycling and cycling lanes? It seems to me that this is a golden opportunity for us to incorporate bike lanes when we're adding sidewalk, and I don't see any representation there, so I'm just wondering if there has been any thought given to that.
I see Brian raising his hand behind you.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. This project is strictly looking at sidewalk. In terms of biking or cycling lanes, you would be talking about a major project where you're removing the curbs and widening the road. This is strictly to put a sidewalk within the existing boulevard. It's not intended to be a major construction project.
Okay, thank you. Follow up?
Yes, it seems to me that now that we have received a cycling plan, that we need to start every time we are making changes to our roadways to think about adding bike lanes and other means of active transportation. Of course, this is one of them. But if we keep saying, well, that isn't within the purview of this particular project, then we're just going to keep pushing that can down the road. And somewhere, I believe that we have to say, okay, now we are making changes, there are significant changes, and this is what is going to be incorporated within these.
And just to maybe respond to you firstly, I think in terms of our process, that would be something we've agreed that would go to a budget process in terms of those costs. because we would be increasing the cost of this beyond what's being presented and is accommodated currently in our budget, I would assume. But I think that that will come up in terms of what we can afford, what we prioritize, because I think we need to determine the priority of the projects as they happen in town. And it may be this area, it may not, that's just my response, but I'll let staff add to that if they want, and then I have Deputy Mayor Hall. Director McDonald?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, certainly the intent of this project is to address the sidewalk issue. It's not a larger project. I certainly appreciate the councillor's comments, but that's not the intent of this project. There are projects where we have capital reconstruction projects where we will look at sidewalks where they're identified, not sidewalks, bike lanes or cycling facilities where they're identified. This project, or this particular road, was rebuilt in 2007, and it's not slated for any kind of capital improvement for a very long time. And the deficiency in terms of sidewalk was something that was identified through our development charges, as well as we're having interest from the growth in the area that we thought it was appropriate that we should put the sidewalk in before the people come, rather than a year or two after they come and deal with many years or deal with a number of complaints over time.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else? And then I get, sorry, Deputy Mayor Hall. You want to go first?
I just have 2 questions.
Okay, so do you want to follow up on that? Is there more comment?
There's one more comment, and then I do have another question. My comment is that I'm not satisfied with that reaction. Like I said, I really do believe that now is the time to start making these changes and to acknowledge that we have a cycling plan in place. To have to wait until a major change is contemplated for this particular roadway, when it is one of our busiest roadways and therefore one of our most dangerous roadways when it comes to active transportation, it doesn't make any sense to me. We should be doing this all at once. My second question, and this also will be, actually it's not a question, it's a comment. There is specific reference to the number of trees that would be added to replace the ones that unfortunately have to come down. I'm just wondering if we can make a commitment to how many trees and where after we receive the urban canopy strategy. Because I know, as an example, in the City of Ottawa, where they have a urban canopy strategy, they have a formula attached to replacement of trees according to the size and age of those trees. Such that, for example, those Scots pines, if they are 30 or 40 years old, they may actually warrant replacement by 2 trees, as an example. So all I'm saying is, can we say that we are going to be replacing, and we will replace according to the guidelines of our new urban canopy strategy?
I'm going to add my question as well, because Director McDonald may as well answer this about the trees at the same time. My question was, if we were taking out 59, why were we only putting back in 25? And I wanted to know if we could make a commitment to the other 34 somewhere else. And I do know we do have a very generous donation, but I think our commitment in this term should be, if there's somewhere else, that if we take out 59, we should commit to replacing 59. And if it can't be along this stretch, then where can it be? But I know Director McDonald has a response to those questions, so I'll let him answer.
Through your worship, sorry, Madam Chair. I forgot what meeting I was at. The forestry plan is coming out. I talked to Director Culver here, and it's coming out in the next month, and that will address certainly tree canopy and possible replacement formulas. We don't have that at this point, but yes, we are taking down more than we're putting back. In terms of the amount we're putting back, it's based on a recommendation from our landscape architect. The spacing is at a certain spacing to promote good health of the trees. You put them too close together, you compromise the tree. So, and the spacing is very similar to what we planted on First Street. As far as additional trees, planting them elsewhere, that's certainly something that we can include as part of our program.
Right, thank you. Good? Good, okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Just a question of clarification along the lines of Councillor Dory's questions regarding cycling lane. If we do go with option B, with the depth, is there an assumption to be made that possibly there is a depth there that would allow for a bike lane to be added at a later time? Or is this the type of project similar to Third when we were debating putting in a temporary sidewalk, where the comment that came back from staff was that it truly is temporary, and whenever the road has to be upgraded to its full capacity, this would simply be taken out?
I think at 2.5 meters, you would redo the sidewalk when you widen the road.
So it truly is temporary in that respect. Okay. And then just to clarify, I didn't understand. I understood the math, but I didn't understand the placement. So that section from Lockhart south that has those Scotch pines, they're all coming out. Is there tree replacement envisioned from that area that would go then between the curb and the sidewalk? Or are we just taking trees all? Oh, I didn't understand that in terms of where the trees are going.
Where the trees are going or where they're coming out?
No, I understand where they're coming out.
Where they're going to be put back will depend on where the bell is. So we could potentially put it between the sidewalk and the curb,
Okay.
or we could put it between the
And then just
sidewalk
be
and the
reducing
fence,
them.
depending on how much space we have between the fence, because it moves a little bit. There is some flexibility there.
Comment for you, Madam Chair, to maybe pass through to our CAO and others. When we start to look at this tree program and tree replacement, quite frankly, if I was a neighbor who was living on the east side, those trees have probably effectively provided a number of things from noise pollution reduction to shade, etc., that we somehow incorporate in design that, you know, people be compensated with the offering of a tree, that type of thing, on their adjacent property. It wouldn't impact our project moving forward, but would be something of compensation.
Okay, yeah, that's good, something we could do with the other 34. Okay, Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, I'm going to tug at the same thread on the trees because the statement that, and maybe I can get clarification through you, Madam Chair, from either John or Brian. We talked about if the trees can't go back, the 25 slated trees go back in this area because of the siting of the bell, then they would go elsewhere in the municipality. So are you saying there's a possibility that the trees there might not be any trees along that section because of the bell infrastructure?
Correct.
Is there
That's not my preference, but
Yes,
it's the reality.
and that's the concern, I guess, that I have, and I don't think it's anybody's preference, and it goes to the deputy mayor's comment that these trees are long-standing and have been a great shade and benefit to the residents along there. And is there any way that we can predetermine before we start cutting what the options are?
Oh, absolutely.
So before we start cutting, you can come back to council and tell us what the status of the replanting would be. I think that would be a great assistance to the council and the standing committee because.
Do you want us to come back either way, or just if we cannot?
I think either way would be good, just to confirm you can put them there, or that if they can't be put there, then we'll have to discuss the alternatives, and they might be, as the deputy mayor suggested, a compensatory way of looking at through the grant program or other programs to see what trees we can make available to the landowners so that they can plant, because I think that's a huge loss. Although I understand the necessity for the sidewalk, and it seems to be, regardless of the location, that the trees are going to be in jeopardy either way. So that was my comment. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Councillor Ann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've heard from a number of people who live in this area that they would love a sidewalk there, so I'm so pleased to see this coming forward to council. There are a lot of children who walk currently along a path, not exactly where the sidewalk is, it's sort of up and down and around trees. So this will be a much improved safety aspect. I do, because I live down in this area, I know that there is a lot of schools down there and a lot of kids going up to the high school, down to the two public, well, really 3 public schools in the area. And the sidewalk's heavily used for kids on bikes because no one would dare risk their life, I would suggest, on here, Ontario. So this sidewalk will also be used for bikes, which I understand, but I just really wanted to echo Councillor Doherty's remarks that that I feel that when we're doing anything like this, we have a big area, to my eye, is, should we be looking, even if it's just a segment at a time, whether there can be some room made available for the bikes that are going to be there anyway. So, I mean, we can try and pretend there's going to be no bikes, but unlike in the more central part of our town, there's no alternative north-south route here for bikes, unless you go way over to the other side of Admiral School, so which isn't that feasible. So I just wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so my question through to you is, are we defining in our recommendation tonight our preference for alternative A or B? Or is your recommendation is strictly A?
Our recommendation is strictly A.
All right, and it really isn't stipulated in our recommendation, so I'm wondering if we should be clearer in that. Is it acting clerk, do I need to clarify that in there?
If the committee's okay with it, we can include that wording to be, to receive and council approve alternative A being the design of the sidewalk.
Okay. Does anybody have any?
Amendment on that?
We'll maybe do one anyway.
I think that's the intent of the staff report. Is it clear in the staff report?
Yeah, okay. So
Yeah, it's clear in the staff report. Really, the intent of the staff report was really to bring to your attention and blessing the removal of the trees because
Oh,
it is.
any of the committee members feel they want to make a formal amendment? I think we're just clarifying staff's intention. Okay. All right. So, if there's no other comments, then I'll call for the vote with the small enhancement. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up we have PRC 2019-19, the Sunset Point High Water and Storm Damage Remediation, which was the addendum to our agenda this evening. And I'm going to ask Director Culver to present a summary for us on this file.
Thank you, Chair. This is following through on a commitment made last Wednesday when I gave a verbal report to Council following some consultation with our engineering firm. There's a couple more details included in this, as well as the engineer's fairly comprehensive analysis and report. Two details that did make it into this report that will make it into the council version of the report following this, should the committee see fit to move it forward to council. Two parts. One is I was speaking with the treasurer today, and she requested that I make it known to the committee that that there's been a significant impact on contingency reserves in 2019, which leaves them depleted, which means that this project could push our budget into deficit by year end. So she needs the committee and council to be aware of that. So the report will have that added to financial impacts before it's issued to council. And then another detail that I wanted to make sure was that that our insurance provider has been contacted and are working on it as a possibility, but I would suggest not a likelihood that that insurance would cover the damage. So just in case that question was in anybody's mind, it is being explored, but I wouldn't suggest that it's likely. Other than that, I think hopefully the report, being as comprehensive as it is, sort of explains what's been studied and what the approach is that's being recommended.
Okay. Thank you. And so maybe I could just ask you to, I didn't hear you speak to the cost that we're considering in terms of financial impact. Could you just summarize the stages of that for us, please, for the public?
Sure. So the total cost is the recommended budget that we're suggesting, the upset limit is $315,000. That's comprised of $265,000 of repairs to revetments and the shoreline infrastructure that was lost in the two storms, just isolated to the area near the Inukshuk and on the north end, a little past the midpoint to the west, and then also to the lookout area to the east of Sunset Point. Those are the two areas that are primarily addressed by these revetments. There is some also minor repairs indicated within the report as well to sort of help shore things up. But that's the $265,000 cost. Staff have estimated an additional $50,000 cost to repair grounds in time for summer season next year when we know use of the park will be high again.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so we're going to go to the gallery now, and I know we do have at least one person who wants to speak to this. Mr. Gibson, do you want to come forward for us, please?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. My name is George Powell,
Or Paul, sorry.
and I live at 1 Niagara Street. My wife is with me today, and also Don Gibson, who is a next door neighbor. The concern we have is that our property abuts Nottawasaga Bay, and on November 1st, as you all know, early in the morning, we were awakened by what was really a very noisy, wavy type thing was occurring in front of us. And I think most of you have been down there and taken a look and seen what's happened, and you've got the rock, the pathway itself completely covered with debris and large stones and so forth. And a significant amount of, you can call it minor damage, but damage to the revetments along there where the soil has been washed out. The thing that I notice when I walk that, and I walk it all the time, and particularly the part that goes behind over to the fen itself, to the Sunset Point fen, which is behind where Mr. Gibson's house is, over to the bridge and then over to Sobeys. That area was flooded out, for a significant distance. It's iced up right now. But what you notice there is along the shore where the waves were impacting the shoreline, you have what I call a cobbled beach. So where the shoreline hasn't been hardened, the damage there is really not damage, it's just the fact that you have a beachhead there. So I don't see that as an issue where we haven't hardened the landscape. It's where we've hardened the landscape that the issues are really severe. So that was the one thing that I noticed, and if you want to sort of feel it out, you take a look at the two bathing beaches. There's really nothing wrong with them, other than the one end where the sidewalk was undermined, and the reason for that was the waves came along, the hardened shoreline hit that corner and undermined the sidewalk. So these are just observations, but they're my observations, and I do it all, I make a point of making you people aware of it, because I feel I should. Now the town is going to reinforce certain areas to protect the structures that are there, but the western end, and Dana, I didn't really hear what you said. I think you mentioned something about the western end. The western end is at the foot of Niagara Street, and that particular area has been damaged, and it will be further damaged by the wave action. So it's undermining that area that you have by the Clarkson Pavilion. So that's a concern. The water levels are not going to go down. They're going to stay up, as I see it, and that's what IJC and the Canadian Coast Guard are saying. So we've got some issues there. Hopefully the bay will ice over this year. They're predicting a cold area, and that will help. But the waves are the major issue we have there. What the ice will do, God knows. So, we have to be on our toes, and Dean, you know that. Now, the other issue that I wanted to bring up is the news check. And Dean and I had a conversation that the actual structure, according to a friend that was actually there at the time, Neil Ciotti, what he was reporting was that when they went to put the Nushchuk in, they were asked by engineering or by the building department to make sure that the foundation went down. And he told me today that foundation was some mass concrete going down about 12 feet to shale, and that's different than what Dean has understood, and I appreciate that. So there's a difference of an opinion on that, and I think it's important that the engineers be made aware of that, and you could make it just a quick survey there to find out whether or not that thing could get undermined. And lastly, my favorite subject is traffic on St. Lawrence. It's not making the corners these days. And last weekend, one skidded off the road, crossed my front lawn, and stopped and hit two of my markers, which thing your and stopped right at my driveway where my shrubs are. Last year it was $1,500 damage. So turning that corner at the foot of St. Lawrence and Niagara is difficult to do. And lastly, I had an eagle head on top of a rock there that somebody lifted the other day. It's about this high, and he's given to me as President Award or some kind of thing. But things are happening down there, and we'd like to see more surveillance, I guess is the right word, of what's going on. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Powell, for that. So I think that's good. We've received your information, and we appreciate you taking the time. And I apologize for the panicked look I gave Mr. Gibson there when I called the wrong person. All right, next up we have Matthew Perry. Come up. I am having a bad night with names tonight. I got the first name right, Matthew. Yeah.
It's not Perry, it's Pretty.
Yes, I was.
Beautiful or crafty.
Acting, you've been here enough, I should know.
Crafty. Well, it's Matt Pretty here from 304 Minnesota. To tell you the truth, this whole cutting trees thing is a lot of nonsense. We gotta really dump. We gotta dump extra fill down there, because every year, give things a chance to grow. Because it's gonna be a battle. Every year is gonna be a battle, and I see the water coming up. And I've seen the YouTube videos, and it looks bad. It looks bad. And I really think, we need to facilitate PRC with freely dumping fill down at the bay. Because really what we're going to see is sort of growing, receding, growing, receding. And if we can get on par with any kind of developments happening, just dump fill in these areas, and what you'll get is, stormwater retention every year. And as Mr. Powell's probably wondering, what's going to happen next year? And the equivocal of government standards will change every year. I don't see it as a cycle. I see it as climate change. We're going to get hammered every single year. And as Mayor Saunderson was doing with the UN, and there's a facilitation with the Georgian Bay Foundation to raise money, I think dumping fill into these areas is smart. And then if the path is there, well, we plow the path as we go. But really, it's going to be a yearly situation. We just need the approval from NVCA to dump extra fill. But I would like to see signage, high waters, high wind. Do you really want your 10-year-old kids to be swimming at Sunset Point? Do you? Probably not.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, so if there's no one else in the gallery who wishes to speak to this matter, Okay. Our motion is that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following recommendation to the next meeting of council. The council authorizes staff to move forward with emergency repairs related to storm damage and erosion at Sunset Point as recommended in the attached engineering report with a project upset limit of $315,000. A mover and a seconder, please. Mayor Saunderson, Councillor Hamlin. Questions? Committee members. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I understand from reading this report, these are emergency repairs, and I am fully in support of having our lands protected. I'm wondering, and through you perhaps to Director Culvert, will Tatum be doing an inventory of what storm damage has occurred to the rest of our lands, public lands?
So thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, no, not through this project. So this project has been focused solely on Sunset Point and the fact that significant property was lost through the two storms, and more than that, that the shoreline has been made more vulnerable to storms in the future. So that's really what the focus has been. Going into a larger scope was not part of the intention of this particular project, but certainly that can be done with an appropriate budget at a future time.
I'm just speaking to the issue that if the damage was, I think the amount was in the 900,000s, you might qualify for provincial funding because of, I think this came out at Director Culvert's presentation on this at council. And I know a lot of our lands are subject to problems when we have storms, and I haven't gone out and had a look at it, but I imagine, I'm just wondering, I guess, if it's possible and what would be necessary for us to authorize staff to do such a review.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in response to the conversation we were having with MMAH regarding the municipal disaster assistance program, we did survey, albeit as we can, to see what kind of significant damage could be assessed to help us to sort of reach that threshold to assure ourselves that that funding wasn't available. And in reality, a significant amount of our property is protected within the harbor, for example. So that there were no effects that we were able to trace directly to the storms inside the harbor. On the outside of One Point, there was some undermining of trails from water that had made it through the revetments. Fortunately or unfortunately, that's a condition that's been going on since the high water first presented itself, and the high water in and of itself is not considered to be a disaster under the context of that fund. So we did do some sort of survey, some sort of review work to try and see if there was a way, but the criteria is that it has to link directly to the storm events. And so we were not able to convince ourselves that impact beyond Sunset Point were significant enough to get that, not on municipal lands alone.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. Sorry, nurse. Yeah. See it?
Sorry, I just have one question arising out of the deputation. Would this be a good time to ask?
Sure.
Not of the deputant, but of staff.
Yes.
Mr. Powell referenced people running over his property and doing damage because they're not making the turn properly. And through you, Madam Chair, perhaps to Director McDonald, is this something that we could have a look at? It seems unusual to me that we would have an intersection in town where people on their property might have to fear that this situation is occurring, never mind the cost of replacing vegetation.
Through the chair, yes, this is certainly something we can look into. We've worked with Mr. Powell in the past, put up signs, and it's a unique corner. It's not an intersection; it's a corner where the road turns to go up Niagara. Perhaps there's additional signage we can put in there. Another aspect of it is we've been working with Parks and Rec, looking at the parking allocation down there, and perhaps in conjunction with the parking allocation, we can look at some signage, and it may include parking restrictions, and then we can have some signage that puts an arrow at the, or a checkerboard at the end of that particular road.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Saunderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I was not here at the council meeting when a lot of this was discussed, but I had seen the damage before I left, and it's significant. And I just want to get some clarification through you to Director Culver that the primary intent of what we're looking at in this report is remedial action to prevent further erosion. Is that basically what we're looking at doing at these two sensitive points?
Madam Chair, yes, that's exactly it. It's the most vulnerable impacted parts based on those two storms, which is notwithstanding that other areas of Sunset Point, as indicated by Mr. Powell, are also vulnerable and should be studied.
And it seems to me that really probably this is the beginning of an ongoing problem we're going to continue to be confronted with, and just in these two storms alone, it seems to me the shoreline has changed dramatically. So while I'm in favor of this, I think we need to take every step possible to prevent this continuing erosion from happening, and it's going to be an ongoing problem, and we need to confront it as soon as we can. Otherwise, the cost will just continue to go up before we take steps. So while the financial impacts are significant, I think the impacts of not doing anything will be more significant.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Culver?
Sorry, if I could respond to the Mayor and Chair. So agreeing with everything that you're saying, I also didn't put in this report and probably should have, that the revetments that are being recommended are not, they're not Band-Aids, so they're not sort of put them in until we can get to a better solution. These are intended to be a good solution based on criteria as we understand it today. The other thing to understand is that these revetments came up in a question that I was asked by somebody else, so I think it's important for council and the public to know. They're not designed to direct energy at other parts of the park, so in and of themselves, they won't cause more damage to other parts of the park. So they will actually literally just absorb that energy rather than us exacerbating other parts of the shoreline that are protected under this project measure. So I just want to be clear, what you stated is exactly correct. I don't want to give any idea that we're doing this and then we're backing off. This is actually, in some ways of thinking, could be part of a longer term solution, and it's being planned and intended that way.
So just to follow up on that, it's an investment that will remain and we can continue with. It's not something that just try and slow the rate of erosion, it's to stop it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
My only one question, probably through you to the treasurer, I was a little concerned with the, I know she's not here, but you're gonna have to take it to, was the statement regarding the financial condition, and I support this 100%, and I don't see that we have a choice. So that precursor, I think maybe I would ask the treasurer to come prepared to tell us the alternates, because we can't do a deficit. So I don't think that I want to make this decision with fear, but that council will need to be apprised of our choices. But I don't think we, in terms of how to handle it financially, I just don't think we have a choice here. We need to do this. So that was my only comment. So all right. So if there's no other comments or questions, all those in favor of the recommendation, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move into agenda item number 7, which was reports and minutes of other committees and boards. And first up, we have Andrea Leamy, a member of the Collingwood Heritage Committee. And Andrea's going to speak to us about the tax relief program. Andrea.
Hello. My name is Andrea Leeming. I'm the Vice Chair of the Heritage Committee.
I want to thank you very much for your patience in allowing me to present this heritage property tax relief. I was supposed to do it in September, but obviously I had an accident and wasn't able to do so at that time. So I thank you very much. I also wanted to thank Margaret Moy for putting this presentation together for us and for me to be able to present it to you today. So I'm assuming just So, an incentive for heritage, well-maintained heritage properties enrich our quality of life and give the communities their unique character and sense of place. I don't know if you know this, but we lose 20% of our heritage buildings throughout the country every year. They also support the economic growth in the town through tourism. The tourism, one of the pieces of paper that I gave you, if you look at the third point down, 38% of the Canadian heritage travelers, not just regular tourism, but when I talk about these numbers, I talk about travelers that are only traveling for heritage reasons, are from Ontario, and 38% of these travelers are from Toronto. So that's a very significant number that we have there. With continuous care, major restoration projects and their high costs can often be reduced. Through our committee every month, we have people coming to us saying that it's too expensive to maintain these heritage properties, and what we'd like to do is give them more incentive in which to do so. This tax relief, along with the grants, can assist heritage property owners with maintenance and rehabilitation costs. Currently, Collingwood offers 3 separate programs to support heritage. One is the grant program, up to $3,000 annually. There's a major redevelopment and restoration tax incentive, eligible for property owners who invest a minimum of $200,000 in construction costs and restoration. What I have found in the past 2 years of being on the committee is not many people know about these 2 programs. And certainly not enough people know about the tax relief, which is currently at 10%. Heritage is an important cornerstone of Collingwood. We are often mentioned in publications as leaders, with our heritage guidelines being the first to be voted by bylaws. With the size of our district and the number of Part 4 designations that we continue to grow. It is important to continue to support our heritage architecture and to consider increasing some of these benefits. Especially important is the tax relief program not only use Collingwood's money, but also provincial and county funds. In 2001, municipalities in Ontario were given the option of establishing a heritage tax credit program under the Municipality Act. The program gives tax credit from 10% to 40% to the owners of the heritage properties. 22 municipalities across the province have passed this law. The objective is to provide municipalities with the incentive to encourage preservation and restoration of the heritage buildings, assist heritage property owners acting in the public interest to preserve our past by helping offset maintenance and rehabilitation costs incurring in the heritage property. Also, what this incentive and the other incentives do for the heritage is maintain sustainability within our community. So we have to reuse and repurpose the buildings that we currently have rather than tear them down and build other buildings. So property tax in Ontario, taxes equal assessment of the property multiplied by the local tax rate, which has 3 components: municipal tax rate set by the municipality, county tax rate set by Simcoe County, educational tax rate set by the province. Since the heritage tax rebate is based on the percentage, those who pay a higher tax rate will receive a greater rebate. Highlights of the program. We have different reduction rates for different classes of the property, so that's commercial and residential, mixed use, multi-use. Eligibility of property decided by the municipality. We may be able to cap or maximize the amount of tax reduction per property. And the penalty for breach of agreement, if the owner takes action inconsistent with the agreement, may be required to repay all the tax reductions. Currently, we have, I believe, an individual who goes around annually and makes sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing within the property. But I think it should be a little bit more looked after than it is, probably. That's for another day. Okay, so who's eligible for the program? Heritage properties designated under Part 4 and Part 5 of the Heritage District. They must enter into the Heritage Preservation and Maintenance Agreement with the municipality. The Heritage Preservation and Maintenance Agreements require for the owner to maintain the property in good condition and obtain permits for work. We are finding now in the Heritage Committee that a lot of people do not ask for permits. They just go ahead and do the work, often with not the right heritage materials, colors, or in accordance with our heritage bylaws. Municipality to monitor conditions of the property through annual inspections, which we currently do. The owner must carry out the work according to the approved priority maintenance list, and there is initial fee of about $50 to apply, and an annual application is required. The list of participating municipalities is now grown to include 46 lower and single-tier municipalities, 5 upper-tier municipalities that have adopted the Providence Heritage Property Tax Relief Program, and the representation of 42.9% of the population in organized municipalities. So, how is this program funded? The program is funded municipal and province and Simcoe County as of 2016 share all the funding. Municipality must follow the same rule as other optional tax relief programs, non-tax revenue sources, tax revenue sources, and the province contributes school board portion of the property taxes. I know this is getting a little mundane. So, what we have here are all the municipalities. There are currently 29 municipalities. Only 4 are at the 10% mark. As you can see, there's a lot at the 40% mark, and we are at the 10% mark. We're at the 10% mark, and one of our major economic viabilities is tourism. And it's heritage tourism as well. And we're at 10%. So, you can see that. So here is the town of Collingwood, the heritage tax refund. When it was done, 2010, 2015, and we're at 10%. These are the other towns within the Simcoe County that we are compared to. So we've got the town of Midland, who's at 40%, Penetanguishene is at 40%, Springwater's at 40%, and the township of Tay is at 10%. That's just within our county as well. We're one of the lowest. So here we've got a breakdown. The town contributes over $14,000. The county then matches and contributes to them another $5,000. And the province, $12,000. So if you look at those numbers, we have a total of $32,000 there. And so we have more is coming from the county and the province than it is from the town currently. So the reasons we should increase and renew the tax relief bylaw: the community improvement is part of the town's strategic plan. An increment would be considered reasonable, as Collingwood is the very bottom of the scale in comparison to these other municipalities. Collingwood's rebate is exceeded by the amount contributed by the province plus the county, 44%, 55%.
We're just at 1 minute, but I think you're almost done.
Oh yeah. These are the projected the projected costs increase. So right now, we're at the 13,000, just over 13,000. We would like to ask for the 20%, which is at 26, over 26,000. So it's a $13,000 raise for the town. The recommendations here, heritage properties are more expensive to maintain than newly built properties. Designation of properties is accompanied by an obligation on the part of the owner to comply with the heritage bylaw. Continue to support our cultural and built heritage to give our community a sense of place and to support the economic rewards of tourism. Renew the heritage tax release bylaw and to increase the percentage by 20%. I would like to close by reading the last page that I have that I've given you here. The economic viability that cannot be measured purely in numbers is the historical and sustainability building environment. A preserved and repurposed building maintains the character and the history of the neighborhood. It provides cultural sustainability in allowing present and future generations to understand where we have come from and how our culture was molded from the past. The city tells its own past. It transfers its own knowledge and memory, largely through the fabric of this built environment. Historical buildings are the physical manifestation of memory, and it is the memory that makes this place, Collingwood, significant. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to ask any questions with respect to this report? Yes, Penny.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Chair Jeffries and councillors. I'm here on behalf of the BIA, and it's more of a statement to say that earlier this year we passed a unanimous motion in support of the increase of the heritage tax relief to 20%. Many of our members feel that it frees up some money for them to then invest in their buildings. So it's an opportunity to not only maintain but perhaps improve, and we're in full support of this recommendation.
Perfect. Thank you for that update. Committee members, any questions or comments for Andrea? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much. Through you to Andrea, thank you very much for this very thorough presentation. I must admit that I am in full agreement with you. If we consider just the success of our downtown heritage core, not only as an example for the rest of the province and the country, but also as a retail district. I truly believe that because we are a heritage district, that has been a source of a lot of our attraction and makes us a go-to that we may not otherwise be. In addition, there is most definitely an issue with compliance. This might help to address that. There is also an issue with controls and penalties. This would help to address that. So I think it's the right thing to do. It's the right time to do it. I see you've also included some financial implications. Chair, I assume that this will go to council and that perhaps we will have the opportunity to make it part of our budget discussions this year.
Yeah, that I
with
clarified
council approval.
with the acting clerk that we would simply refer this or recommend to refer it to the budget process. We have to recommend the council does that.
I have a mover and seconder from this committee. We can make that recommendation to council.
Okay, all right, so that's what we will do. I was going to ask for a mover and a seconder after we'd had our discussions, and we will refer it to the budget process. Mayor Saunderson?
Yes, through you. Thank you, Andrew, for your presentation. One thing that I think certainly along the heritage theme, but also looking at our densification and our unused apartments in some of the downtown core. I think it's an interesting way to try and get the discussion going about getting those apartments fixed up. But I actually have a question for clarification, just it says increase the percentage of the tax relief to 20%, but I think I heard you say increase it by 20%.
Oh, sorry,
So-
to 20%.
To
That was my mistake.
Okay, all right, so we're looking at 20%, and thank you very much for this. It's a very interesting proposal.
No problem. 40 if you want to really do it.
Okay, well, I was expecting you to ask before that, actually. It's usually what the lawyers do on the understanding they calm down. We'll have that discussion, and with that said, I'd be happy to move that.
Yeah, okay. I just had a couple of points of clarification as well. In terms of the numbers, the $26,000 forecast by doubling that you came up with,
Mhm.
is that based on our current experience or based on a maximum that's allowable to happen? Is there a maximum on, I mean, if we increase this, we have a lot more people participate exponentially. Does our budget impact go up even more? So I would just want to have an understanding of that
I
estimate.
refer that question to Margaret, who put that slide together.
And that's a definite possibility. These were based on the numbers that we have now. But again, if it expands, then you also expand the benefits that you get for the whole.
I understand that, but I think we need to make an educated decision based on all the facts. Is there a cap in there?
Not,
I don't,
No,
that was
you-
my second question, is there a cap?
is that the reason some municipalities do?
Oh, some municipalities did have a cap and that would make sense, so we can put that into the mix in our discussion at budget, for sure. Good, Councillor Doherty.
Just speaking to that, the other item that I noticed in the presentation was that it may be restricted to properties that are considered to be significant in some ways. And so that would also help to put some control over who is applying, how many applications we're receiving year by year.
Okay, yep, Mayor Saunders, Councillor Allen, did you have your hand up? Okay, I'm sorry, you go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions of Andrea. I noticed one of the possibilities is for municipalities to have a maximum rebate per property. And I guess this would mainly apply if there was a large commercial property, I guess, that, you know, had significant taxes. Has your committee turned its mind to what a maximum should be?
No, we haven't at this time.
Okay. And I also noticed it's possible to have different rates for commercial and residential property. Do we currently have that in our town, or is it a flat 10%?
We just have a flat 10%.
Okay. The last thing is, and by the way, I'm totally in support of this. I just have these questions because that's me. I really like that the concept of this is that a homeowner has to enter into an agreement to maintain and preserve their property in exchange for this tax relief. And one of the aspects of that agreement, as you mentioned, is that there has to be a monitoring of the property on an annual basis to make sure that the homeowner is living up to their obligations for which they're getting the tax relief. Who's currently doing that? Is that the point that you mentioned? Maybe it's
Yeah, I
done
believe
more-
that Ron Martin was doing it before he left, and not quite sure who's doing it now.
Okay, because I think that would, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Director Farr?
Through you, Madam Chair, the answer to that question is the heritage planner that has been doing inspections. We find ourselves stretched to capacity, so we're looking at doing some contracting to do those inspections before the end of the year.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Perfect, thank you. Mayor Saunders.
And it was just a follow-up really on the different classifications, the ability to charge different rates for different classifications gives you some flexibility to encourage the downtown densification.
If I could, through you, Chair, I don't believe that this tax rebate has really been fleshed out enough. I think that at the beginning when we just did the 10%, it was fine, and then, you know, there was no accountability, and somebody hasn't taken ownership over it yet to expand it and to have the depth that it probably needs.
All right. All right, Deputy Mayor.
Maybe two questions. One is sort of related to relief, but in a different format, through you. Are you aware of any other municipalities that actually offer a loan program that would be registered on the title of property? And the reason I ask is that there are a number of people that, and as there is turnover within the community, the numbers are probably declining, but there are a number of people who own properties of significance who, even if there was a tax relief, they're struggling to maintain the home. They've maybe had the home for 30, 40, 50, 60, in some cases maybe even 70 years if it's a legacy property. And the property value has gone up immensely, the taxes have gone up immensely, but their means in terms of maintaining the property haven't gone up. And in fact, they may be on a fixed income. So even if they're getting tax relief, it doesn't mean that they're going to turn around and spend it on maintaining a property of significance. So it's maybe not something that can be answered tonight, but it'd be interesting to have maybe the Heritage Committee come back in a future minutes just with that question answered, if there is some type of a program like that offered elsewhere in the province.
As far as I know, there is not, but is there?
When I did the original investigation over 10 years ago, before this was initiated, there are communities that do offer that instead. We already have the grant program established here, and it's running very well. You have to match what you get back in grant, and of course there is a cap on that. And you can apply that for every year, and maybe block out your projects so that you can take advantage of it each year till you get the project done. So that was there, and then when the 10% came in, I mean, that was part of the bylaw that they didn't incorporate that part of it. But some municipalities do work on that premise. They did back then anyway, and that's almost 10 years ago. Thank you.
Question? Did you know?
I did. So maybe as a follow-up, I don't want to suppose, but perhaps the Heritage Committee would endeavor to look at that over a period of time and report back through the minutes. The second question, I guess, then I had for staff is we keep referring things to the budget, which is fine. Within the budget presentation, if through either Heritage or through our own staff, through the Treasury, I would be interested in seeing the financial numbers, and maybe I missed it in the presentation, as it relates to 30% and 40% and what that impact would be. More so for me, but also for the other four that aren't here tonight.
Okay, all right, so the mayor has agreed to move the motion to refer this request to the budget process. Do we want to clarify that we would like to see financial impact of the different levels within that? Are you okay with adding that to your motion? Okay. Yep, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Doherty. Any other questions on the motion to ask council to refer this to the budget process and to receive information on the incremental levels of the increases? Mayor Solderson.
Wanted a clarification, I guess, and I don't know if the Heritage Department or Heritage Committee would have this, or we would have this, but get a breakdown of the residential properties versus commercial versus mixed use, so that we get an idea of if we were to look at different rebates for different classification of property. That information could come forward, that would be helpful.
Are seconders okay with adding that for clarification? Okay, we are. Are you okay there, Becky? Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions, all those in favor, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Andrea, and Margaret, and
Jenny,
for being here.
sorry, I have one more question for you,
Yeah,
Chair. The information that you're requiring, at what point, what date would you like, and sometime in the future? We don't meet in December, is it in the new year, March?
We will allow Director Farr to direct his staff as to how to get that information once council approves our recommendation to refer it to budget.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we will work on the Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes. Is there anything further to present with respect to the minutes? We have one recommendation that I will read out that comes with that. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to those? Seeing none, that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee receive and refer the following minutes, including recommendations contained therein, to the next regular meeting of council. Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes October 3rd, 2019, Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes November 7, 2019, and a further recommendation that the Collingwood Heritage Committee recognize that there is a surplus of heritage grant funds for 2019 and recommend the approval of a grant in the amount of $3,000 for the pointing and tucking of brickwork at 33rd Street. A mover and a seconder for that, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Hamlin, any further questions with respect to that? Right, seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry.
I did have two questions specific to the minutes.
Sure.
Sorry, just very quickly, clarification. They were the minutes from the 7th of November. They were items, I guess, sorry, the first one is 5.2, it's more of a comment, and that was, there's reference to banners in support of the Open Doors program, or the Doors Open. And I had made a comment earlier, I can't remember if it was here or at council, in the fact that I thought, it's a fantastic event. I've been here 20 plus years, and it was the first time I had been in the academy, first time I had ever been in the federal building, to the second floor. And but because, as it's noted here, it falls on the same weekend as 10 other wonderful events in the community, it seems to get lost in the shuffle, which is unfortunate. So anything that can be done by this subcommittee to promote the idea of the banners, I quite like. I mean, the banner program that the downtown core has had with the BIA has been very successful, and that just would be a very nice compliment. So I'll end that rambling with a question. The question is specific to 5.3 though, and these are these RT07 signs. So today, as I'm pulling in the parking lot, the one on the corner that seems to have created a bit of an issue is the one on St. Marie and Simcoe has come down, and I'm wondering if somebody can answer where it's going and what that timeline is specifically to that sign.
Is there any staff member who can give us that answer this evening? If not, we'll receive it when you can.
Madam Chair, so the signs being moved, that's correct. I don't exactly know where, and I can find out and let people know through the appropriate means.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
I'd just like to voice my concern. I realize that there are some concerns about maybe the design, etc. I'll be honest, I like them because I could actually read them. But I'm annoyed. I'll be very honest, I'm quite annoyed that I'm not sure who, but somebody has paid to have a sign installed. And without a plan as to where this is going and when, we're now taking it down. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. And I think we should have had a full plan in place, and when that plan was ready to be executed, then we take it down. Because you've got signs that are elsewhere that now don't align themselves with the one that's been removed. Very minor detail, but it annoys me, to be honest.
Fair point. Okay. With that, then I will ask for the vote on the minutes and the recommendation contained therein. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to a consent agenda, that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee, be received and referred to the next meeting of council. Was there anyone here who wished to speak to the MMH, A Place to Grow More Homes, etc. plan update? Being none, it's moved by. That was, you want to put it on the floor, right?
Yes.
Or and then speak to it?
Sure, that's good.
Okay, all right, so I have a mover, seconder, Councillor Doherty. Any questions? Councillor Doherty, Mayor Saunderson first, and then. So we're simply receiving, and then if we want to pull and speak to, we can do that after. So all those in favor of receiving the one item, that is carried unanimously. All there is 8.1.1. Mayor Saunderson, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question to Adam, or Director Farr, sorry, through you. And it seems to me that one of the aspects of this letter from Minister Clark is that they're trying to provide some flexibility with the municipal comprehensive review process. The last government, the Wynne government, took that out of our hands and handed it to our upper tier, which is Simcoe County. So I'm wondering if Director Farr is able to advise, does this give the county the ability to do, to break it out as well and do it on a municipality or regional basis first to address certain issues? I'm just wondering because we know that this may have implications for our hospital redevelopment, and I'm wondering what the flexibility is there.
Through you, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, the county has, in the face of all the changes at the provincial government level and legislation, and then at the time the prospect of amalgamation, had essentially put its whole MCR program on a hiatus. And as Collingwood's about to enter an official plan update, we were and continue to be interested in trying to find opportunities to connect with them to achieve whatever efficiencies can be gained and advance work on our plan in ways that it could dovetail with the MCR to avoid repetitive reviews of the official plan. When they complete, and just for people's general benefit, when they complete the MCR, it typically assigns population of municipalities and scales out the growth of communities. With this new information, I'm not clear what or how the county's approach will change. And typically, with these changes the province has been bringing forward, there's a need for kind of interpretive or transitional kind of guidance on what these things actually mean. So when we connect with a consultant who will be advancing the official plan review, this will be front and center among the issues that we consider in the event that there's flexibility available to the municipality to take more proactive, faster measures rather than waiting the number of years it takes for the county's initiative to be completed. We'd certainly want to explore those as fully as possible. So the short answer is we're still waiting to see what this means and better understand that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, you go first, Councilor Green.
Thank you. Yes, and I had a question as well that I'd like to direct through you to Director Farr. And the first question was, there's reference to settlement area boundary expansion. What was that referring to? Just the residential zoning of the municipality, or is this the full municipal boundary expanding into other municipalities?
That was my question. Okay, Director Farr?
Through Madam Chair, Councillor Doherty, these settlement boundary expansions are typically mobilized when a municipality reaches the limits of its capacity to accept or capacity, I guess, to facilitate development to reach these growth plan targets. So the last time that the numbers for the 2031 growth horizon came out, and the municipality assessed its available land base for accommodating population growth, Collingwood had sufficient lands, significantly sufficient lands to accommodate additional growth. So the notion of Collingwood exploring the settlement boundary area provisions that have been put forward by the province would not likely come into effect for some time. The expansion, as I understand it, is to accommodate where there is a need either for employment or residential lands, where a municipality has exhausted that land supply to accommodate future growth.
Thank you.
I think I kind of got my answer to that too. My understanding when I'm reading it, I thought was in terms, the main focus was to be able to provide housing as quickly as possible for those who needed it within the scope of the built boundaries and the ability to expand them if you needed to. So in terms of the impact of employment lands, I guess it's in there somewhere, but it seemed to me the main focus was being able to house people. All right, so we'll wait for that update. So, that's it for the discussion on that. Are there any departmental update? Oh,
Just want to make the comment. Second part of my comment slash question was just specifically in regard to the permission to expand by 40 hectares. As I see in the letter, it appears that that expansion could occur into industrial or commercial lands or into protected lands. I just want to make the point that a 40-hectare expansion into the Silver Creek wetlands, as an example, would completely eradicate the Silver Creek wetlands. So it is in my view anyway, a cause for concern relative to protection of natural lands.
we have taken the comment. Okay, so now, are there any other updates for departments? Seeing none, everybody's looking down. Other business, we have Mayor Saunderson. Oh, I just ticked it off, there's none through. Any public delegations? Margaret, would you like to speak to us about anything that we haven't covered tonight? All right, thank you. Becky's keeping me on my toes here. All right, now we have Mayor Saunderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to provide a brief update on the Economic Development Action Plan and the Mayor's Advisory Team. We received a great number of applications from a very broad spectrum of people in the community, with business leaders and business owners, local entrepreneurs, with varied experience. So it was a difficult job making the selections, but we have announced, or I will be announcing, we have made our selection of 12 business leaders who will be on the advisory team. And we were focused on making sure that we had a diversity of skill sets, expertise, and experience, as well as perspective on economic development from large and small. So we have on the committee Paula Acetola, Anthony Griffiths, Bruce Harbinson, Brandon Houston, Chris Jordan, Dave Maney, Jonathan Smay, Tony Smith, Andrew Stewart, Shelby Taylor, Foster Williams, and Gillian Farley. And I want to thank everyone who applied. It was not an easy process, and I want to congratulate and thank those who were selected for agreeing to donate their time to this important initiative. We're really looking forward to get grassroots ideas and feedback from the people who are boots on the ground through this workshop. And we're really looking to refine our current Economic Development Action Plan in order to identify specific target sectors in the commercial and industrial sector to make Collingwood investment ready and to be able to attract participants and businesses in those sectors to come into Collingwood. And while we have this as named as the advisory team, there will be several opportunities for the business community and the public at large to provide input and share their ideas as well. And later this week, Engage Collingwood will launch a survey on the Economic Development Initiative, which will be open until December 18. So I would ask everyone who's interested to please complete and share the survey, and to stay tuned to the town's social media challenges and Engage Collingwood, as we will be looking for additional feedback throughout the process. The meetings will be taking place on November 28 and 29 with the advisory team, and we'll put the plan in motion, and we're hoping to come back to council I think in the first quarter of next year with the results and of this active action plan update, and I'm looking forward to it. And again, I want to thank all who applied and congratulate those who are on the board, but also to remind people that they can participate as well through Engage Collingwood. And the survey will be up later this week, I think, and open until December 18. So please take the time to get involved and give us your thoughts. And it's going to be an exciting process.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any other business? No, questions?
Thank you. Yes, through you to the mayor. Can you, I don't recognize all of the names, so I'm just wondering if you can identify what businesses or at least sectors are represented there.
Oh, you know, I can just off the top of my head, I don't have the, I did review the applications once the recommendations came through. So the ones I can certainly tell you about, Anthony Griffiths is a long-standing employee with McLean's Engineering and has been pivotal with their battery-operated mining sector. Bruce Harbinson is an independent businessman who has been involved with I think a high-tech company out of the States. Brandon Houston is a local entrepreneur with Switch Video. Chris Jordan is the CEO at Side Launch Brewery. Andrew Stewart is one of the principals at ISO Water. Shelby Taylor is with the
Chicopee pasta.
Chickapees, yes,
That
so
one I
she's
knew.
been a very successful local entrepreneur. Foster Williams is a consultant with international experience, and Jillian Fairley, of course, is at our economic development office. The others are equally accomplished. I unfortunately just can't give you the details at this point in time.
Thank you. It's a great slate.
Yes, it is. And there were many other very impressive people who applied as well, so I thank them for that.
Councillor Hammond?
Just a comment that I'm just so excited that this initiative is getting underway. I think it will be so great for our town, and I'm happy to hear about the survey as well for other business owners who aren't part of the committee can participate. And lastly, I do recognize one other name, which was Tony Smith, and he's the CEO of the Ho Ho Run. It's 365 Sports. Quite an entrepreneur.
All right. Excellent. All right, so if there's no other business on motion by, oh, sorry, Mayor Saunderson.
Yes,
Carry away.
and this I got just late in the day. So TC Energy is a company that is looking at the development of the pump station up at the range, the Meaford Range. And so they are holding a public open house on Wednesday, December 11, 2019. The doors open at 5:30. 6 to 6:30 is a presentation, and then between 6:30 and 9 p.m. there's a drop-in style open house. It's taking place at Meaford and St. Vincent Community Center Auditorium at 151 Collingwood Street in Meaford. This is a very large generation project, and you may have heard of it. They're going to be drawing water. It's going to be located on the range, but they're going to be drawing water, and they're going to build an inland lake, and then they will release the water down and use a turbine and generate electricity. It's an exciting project, but the environmental impacts, I think, are things that some people may have concerns about. So this is an opportunity to get out and learn about the project and what it's going to involve, and any potential environmental impacts. So it is something that's in our area, and if anyone has concerns, get out and learn about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay. Who would like to move adjournment? Nobody. We want to keep going. Councillor Doherty. All those in favor? We are adjourned.